Hey guys, welcome to this video. It's a video that I've been really excited to make for quite a long time, but this video is going to give you all a basic introduction to a big trip that I have planned and a big life decision I'm making, which is I am going to be moving to the Philippines to try my hand at being a professional poker player. So, to give a bit of a background, I've played poker for around 3 to 4 years. I was a losing player for my first year, and then since then I've managed to continuously make money at it. I've always just seen it as a bit of a side income for the past, but now I've started to really fall in love with the game, and I think it'd be just very fun to try my hand at being a professional at it. So I've had a lot of questions from different people about this trip, and I'm going to address some of the most common questions and also give a basic outline to the money involved with this trip. But this is not just also going to be a poker trip, but I plan to also make a poker blog, where on this channel I'm going to be sharing my adventures over there, film some different stuff, maybe visit some of the different provinces, and just show you what life is also like in the Philippines and how my trip is going. So the big question that I get from most people when I tell them about this trip is, why the Philippines? Why am I choosing to be a professional player in the Philippines, and why not just do this in the UK? So there's quite a few reasons why I've chosen to do this in the Philippines. So I'll just break them all down here, but the first one is going to be cost of living. At the moment, because my focus is going to be mostly on casino games, the only real place that I can play is going to be London. Now, to live in London is just extortionate. To live over there and find somewhere that would be good enough for me to stay on my own, it's just not really viable, which means I'd have to room share with people that I don't really know in London, and it just doesn't seem like a great idea. And if I wanted to live outside of London just to make the costs a little bit cheaper, well, then we have to commute into London, and that's not that cheap either. You know, I'm sure a lot of people know that rail prices are not the cheapest in the UK. So overall, I've kind of broken down the costs in a separate analysis outside this video, but it's just not viable. London is just going to be too expensive for me. Now, Manchester is also an option. There are some casinos, but again, we kind of run into the same issue. It's expensive, and if I want to live outside of the city centre in Manchester, we also run into the same sort of cost issues that we have in London. So that's one of the big reasons. Reason number two is I'm already very familiar with Manila and the games that happen in Manila. So first off, I'm already familiar with the Philippines. I visited there a few years ago before COVID, so I understand how the city is laid out, the best poker rooms to play in, what you can expect from life in general in the Philippines. So I'm not going to be too surprised by anything when I go over there. And also from my experience, the games just tend to be a lot easier than they are in the UK. So I don't know whether this is just because Filipinos just enjoy gambling a little bit more than the Brits do, but I think also part of it might just be the way that the casinos are laid out in the Philippines. They tend to be sort of, the poker and the gambling sections are all very mixed together, so it's a very different structure compared to the UK. And from my experience, the games and the players over in Manila were substantially easier than the UK. Now, there is some cons to this. The biggest con of it is probably going to be Manila itself. Manila is probably if you were going to visit the Philippines, it would be by far the worst place to visit. Manila is just a very big, smoggy Asian city, and there's so many other great places to visit in the Philippines compared to Manila. But again, if you want to make money and you want to play poker, you have to play in Manila. It's just the biggest area for poker in the whole country. And the probably the biggest reason, if I'm being honest, is it just seems like fun. I just really like the idea of kind of setting sail, moving to a different country, and just seeing if I can survive and make it work over there. If I can make a little blog, if I can, do my own thing, have my own little adventure. That's probably the biggest reason. But then when you kind of factor in the other two reasons, that's why overall I think moving to the Philippines is going to be the best decision. Okay, now I'm going to break down how much money I am taking and how much money I'm going to be willing to risk over there. So I have a poker bankroll, but separate to this, I'm also going to have money just to allow me to survive day to day, and I'll break down those costs. So I have my poker bankroll, but then we've also got a separate bankroll which is going to allow me just to survive out there, pay rent, things like that, etc. I had to figure out, before I go to the Philippines, how much money am I comfortable with losing in the city, and then if I lose that money, I say to myself, okay, time to come home. And I thought about it for a while, and I think the most amount of money that I will be willing to lose in the Philippines is going to be about £5,000. If I lose 5 grand, to me, especially if I'm losing 5 grand under 6 months, that to me is going to be a pretty good indicator that I'm not a winning player, and it's probably time to call it a day and head home. So the other costs that we're going to get into are going to be, well, how much do I actually need to make in order to live in the Philippines? Now, this is not for me to actually make money, you know, make a profit or anything. This is just so I can survive. So let's break down these costs now. So in rent, or for rent, it's going to be roughly about £550 to £600, or around $750 US for me to survive per month. Now, it's important to note that that figure includes everything. That is including, so with Airbnb, everything's paid for. You know, you don't have to worry about electric, air conditioning, other types of bills. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff, Wi-Fi, and also a lot of these places also have a gym included, which is pretty good, because I want to make sure that, particularly when I'm sort of sitting down a lot every day, it's very important that I'm working out and keeping my body healthy. The other big cost is going to be food. And food, I can't imagine ever spending more than £10 a day. And I will note, by the way, a lot of these costs that I'm giving you are very sort of overly conservative, so I'm overestimating everything and assuming worst case scenario all the time, because I would rather assume that, oh, it's going to be like a little bit more and then it ends up being less, rather than assuming it's going to be less and then suddenly I have to pay an extra £100, £200 out of nowhere, right? So that's going to be the big one. So the next big cost is going to be medical insurance. Now, insurance is not too expensive. We're looking at about £33 a month, roughly about, you know, just over $1 a day. So not too bad for medical insurance. And the final one, which is a bit of a blur zone, is going to be the visa fees. Now, I have looked online and I've looked at different documents and I've seen all sorts of information about how much the visa fees are. Some people say they're about £100 a month, others say it's less. Some people say, oh, it's initially $100, then it's $50 a month, and I don't know what to make of all this, so I'm just going to assume the visa fees are £100 a month, and if it ends up being much less than this, awesome. If not, no big deal. I factored this into my costs. So, adding all this, all in all, in order for me to live in the Philippines and survive, I need to make £1,000 a month, or about $12.50 US. So, the next thing we have to ask ourselves is, how much can we actually expect to make as a professional poker player? So initially, I'm going to start off by playing 1-2 live, where you typically will buy in for around $200 to $300. And in those games, you can expect typically to make about $20 an hour. So if we play for about 60 hours a month, that should, and again, obviously, this is should, because in poker you don't actually know how much you're going to make per month exactly. It's always variable. Some months you'll make a lot of money, some months you'll make less, some months you might even lose money. That's just the way that poker is. And separate to this video, I'm also going to make a video explaining how poker works and how you actually make money as a professional. But this is just to give you a general idea of the costs. So now, obviously, we don't just want to break even for 6 months. We want to try and actually make some money so that we can move up in stakes, we can play higher stakes games, because if I can play in the 2-4 games where I'm buying in for $400 to $600, we can double our hourly and we can now make $40 an hour. which means I can play less hours per month, and I can spend more time actually enjoying my life over there, and do some traveling and stuff. So I'm going to be aiming to play for at least 160 hours per month, which, if we factor in the fact that I'll be making $20 an hour, that means I'll be making $3,200 per month in EV, or expected value. So my expected value is going to be $3,200 per month. Now, obviously that figure is going to change massively from month to month. It might be more, it might be less, but that's roughly what I'm kind of expecting to make. Now, the next thing we have to ask ourselves is, what is the risk with this? How bad could this trip actually go? How much money could we be prepared to lose? So I've run a variance simulator, which kind of gives me an idea of how much my risk is going to be out there. Now, I've assumed that I am going to be making about $40 for every 100 hands that I play. So this is roughly 20 big blinds per 100. Again, don't worry about that term, we'll cover it in a future video, but that's roughly what I'm expecting. And honestly, this is kind of on the conservative side for live poker. I think my win rate could be much higher than this. But again, worst case estimates, let's assume worst case and just go with this. So how bad could it go? Well, assuming that this is my win rate, I have a 23% chance of losing at some point during this 6-month trip, of losing $600. Now, that would kind of suck, but we can deal with that, right? That's not the end of the world, but the reality is it could get worse than this. We have a 3.5% chance of losing $2,000 or £1,600. So 3.5% of the time, I am at some point in this, in this trip that I'm doing, of losing £1,600. Now, what are the odds that we lose close to everything? What is the chance that we lose every penny that we have playing out there in Manila? Well, the odds of me losing approximately $4,000, which, bear in mind, would not be my whole bankroll. My whole bankroll is going to be about £5,000 or about $6,250. Well, the odds of me losing $4,000 is about 0.12%. So roughly about 1 in 1,000 times we will lose that much. So as you can see, there is risk with this, and we should expect and be prepared that we definitely could go on a massive downswing that could be in the 10 buy-in figures, but it's extremely slim. The odds of this happening are very, very low, and provided that we are a winning player, which I know I am based on my online results, this is very unlikely, and there's not a huge chance of this happening. So that's basically it. That's all the figures. That's everything that's going into this. And I also plan to make this, as I mentioned at the start of this video, not just a blog about poker, but also just life in the Philippines. I'm going to do some trips. I'm going to go around, show you all what life is like there. And I think this would be very exciting. And it's a good way for me also, given the fact that I'm in a foreign country, I don't know anybody, it's a good way of me keeping in touch with all of you back at home and making things feel a little less lonely while I try to make new friends out there and, make new connections. So I hope you guys will enjoy following me on my adventure. I'm going to be leaving in roughly the middle of September, and I'll be trying to keep sort of weekly blog updates, let you know how it's all going. But yeah, I'm super excited for this trip. And the best thing about this trip is I get to share everything with all of you. If I'm losing money, if I'm just like burning money and losing thousands of dollars, I'm going to share it on this channel. If I'm winning thousands of dollars, I'm gonna let you all know what's happening. And the best thing is I don't know what's going to happen. So it's very, very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to this. So if you're interested in following me on this adventure and seeing what happens, then you feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel or keep in touch with me here on Facebook. But yeah, that's the trip, and I will post another video in the future outlining how poker works later on. But yeah, hope you enjoy this, and yeah, let's see how it goes.